Hi, welcome to Christine's Corner. We have back Morgan Urgo from the Carousel Museum in Bristol on Riverside Avenue.
So Connecticut has a great history of carousels. We're very fortunate. There's quite a few in Connecticut. So we have, I'm going to see if I can get them all. This is going to be a test for me. So we have quite a few antique carousels. So Bushnell Park Carousel in Bushnell in Hartford is a Solomon Stein and Harry Goldstein carousel. It was built in 1914. It's one of only 3 of their carousels that still exist, which is really special.
Yeah.
And they were really known for really large horses with, really big faces, very expressive features, because all of these animals, again, are wood carvings. The other 2 carousels that are still remain from the Stein and Goldstein Company are the Central Park Carousel in New York City.
Oh.
And they also, there's still one that's up and running in Knoebels, which is a small family-owned, very similar to Lake Compounce amusement park down in Pennsylvania. Yeah, and so Bushnell Park is a wonderful carousel. If you haven't visited that, it's wonderful. And
I did, but I completely forgot. I think of Lake Compounce, but I forget about right here in Bushnell Park.
Yeah, in Bushnell Park, it's amazing, and the Bushnell Park Foundation has been doing some wonderful renovations to it. The city of Hartford just created, not just 2014. It's amazing how time flies.
Right.
2014 created a new building, a new pavilion for it. So there's restrooms down there now. There's a lobby. They do concessions, and they have a private space for parties. But one of the best things is that they've just been working on their mechanism, the interior parts of the carousel, and so now they've cranked up the speed a little bit, so it goes much faster.
Oh, no.
I happened to just go ride it the other day, and I went, oh yeah, this is much faster. It's definitely a thrill ride.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that carousels were originally created for men. They were not for women, and they were not for children.
Oh, they were?
Yeah, they were for men. And because of that history of the knights and the jousting and the equestrian skills.
Where was this?
So this was back, we think our best guess is that this is in Europe, probably France or Spain. But this idea of spinning around a pole was happening in a lot of different places throughout the medieval times. The earliest reference that we know of to a carousel type machine is in a Byzantine relief back in the 1400s. It's
way back.
Yeah, it's about it's a stone carving of a circus.
A stone carving.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's really incredible. So this idea, and there was a Native American tradition of people hanging by their feet spinning around poles. There was also a similar Chinese tradition, but as we know of carousel with the platform and the animals or baskets,
Yes.
was really came out of Europe and came out of the medieval knights, and that's where the brass ring comes from. The grab the brass ring is they would try to get their lances through these small rings, and it was a show of their skill on horseback.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then we have the carousel.
Yeah, and then now we have the carousel. So then I moved to beer garden, German beer gardens, which if you were a lovely lady, you did not go to the German beer garden. And if you were a child, you did not go to the beer garden.
Not, yeah.
And then they moved to the United States, where we get a whole new breed of carousel here in the United States. But then going back to the carousels that we have here in Connecticut, we also have Lake Compounce. Lake Compounce Carousel, parts of Lake Compounce Carousel were originally built in 1895 and were at a place that many people might know of, which is Savin Rock in North Haven. It was a very famous amusement park with a beautiful carousel. And then Lake Compounce, the carousel that's now at Lake Compounce, moved to Lake Compounce in 1911. Actually, in the Bristol Press, the headline for that day was "Lake Compounce buys carousel for $10,000," which in 1911 was a lot of money. Yeah. And then we have Lighthouse Point down in New Haven. That is a beautiful carousel. I believe it's a Loof or an Illions carousel. It might be a Mengels carousel, a Carmel Mengels carousel. I apologize that I don't know exactly which one that is, but it's beautiful and beautifully maintained by the city. We also have Sunny's Place, which is in Somers, Connecticut, which is a Philadelphia Toboggan Company carousel from 1925. We also have the Carousel at Old Lyme, and that is a Herschel half and half machine, which we call it's half metal and half wood. The animals are actually, their bodies are carved from wood and their legs are metal, and that was something that came out of World War II, because when you step up onto a carousel, you never want to step on the legs. The legs are actually wooden legs that are doweled into a wooden body, and so when you step on the legs to get up, you break them, and so that was a real problem. And so the carousel manufacturers started making aluminum legs because they could make those faster than they could having them carved, but still you introduce wood and metal together and you get a lot of wood rot.
Yeah.
And so,
I didn't know that they were hollow either.
Yeah, they're hollow on the inside, yeah.
Yeah, it's and I don't know why I was thinking that the wood carver was also painting it. So.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on. It's a completely different skill set. I'm a painter by trade, but you know, when you go to carving, it's very, very difficult. Thinking in 3 dimensions and carving in 3 dimensions is very, very different than drawing something flat on a piece of paper or painting. Yeah. And the same thing with painting carousel animals as well. Painting something in 3 dimensions is much more difficult than painting something that's flat, which is really, really difficult skill. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you say there was 2 sides to it?
Yes, so there is 2 sides to a carousel animal, and so we have what we call the romance side. So if you think about a carousel animal, it's always going in the same direction.
Correct.
It never gets off. You know, it doesn't get to go home at the end of the day.
No.
So it's always going in the same direction. So carousels in the United States operate counterclockwise, and so they always run in the same direction, and thus their outside is always facing out. Now, because this was a business, they didn't take time to carve or decorate the inside. And so your outside is what we call the romance side. It's highly decorated, and you have a series of horses in sequence on the carousel. You might have 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 2, but your outside row horse, what we call the outside row horse, if you think about geometry, it's like a donut. The outside of the donut is bigger than the inside. So the horses on the outside are going to be a bigger circumference. You know, they're going to be bigger. They're going to have more decoration. And as you get towards the inside, not only is the inside of the figure going to be different, but the carousel horses are actually on the inside are smaller and less decorated as well. Because when you get on the ride, you're only seeing the ones on the outside.
Yeah, I never noticed.
Yeah, and so when you're finding people collecting these animals, they want to collect outside row, you know, standers or jumpers that are highly decorated. And then so the inside is called the apprentice side, and that's where the apprentice or, you know, carver in training got to practice. So if he messed up, it was only on the inside.
No one knew.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you see a carousel horse that has more decoration on its left side, that means that horse is going clockwise, and that's an English horse. Yeah, and so just like they drive on the other side of the road, their carousels operate on a different way.
Side.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I noticed there's stones in there.
Yes.
Did they ever have real stones, or was it always just fake?
I don't know if they ever. I can't imagine that there's a carousel out there that has real stones. But that they'd be gone already. Yeah. But the stones that you do see in most antique operating carousels are faceted glass, which is also very difficult to come by. We have to order our faceted glass jewels from Germany. There's only one company that we're able to find the sizes and styles that we're looking for these days. And then also the other thing to note is when you go to a carousel like Bushnell Park or Lake Compounce, the gold on the carousel is actually 23.5 karat gold leafing. Oh, it's all real gold. Wow. Yeah, which really
can't
is.
Steal that.
Yeah, no, you can't take that off. No. But they're really special, and they also use aluminum or silver leaf when you see the silver on there, and then copper leafing, and that's because they're outside. A lot of times they're outside. They hold up to the. They have the. They shine better and they wear better with the gold. It just there's a big difference between gold paint and gold leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of polishing of the horses?
Not as much polishing of the horses, but a lot of polishing of the brass poles.
The brass poles, right.
The brass poles, because that's what people are touching.
Right.
And so, it's, one of the reasons why carousels were in such decline is because of the amount of maintenance that they require. They were built at a time when labor was cheap, and people really, were paying for these thrill rides, and, hundreds and thousands of people would ride them every day for a nickel a piece. It was enough to support the carousel. So go ride your carousel, your local carousel. Support your local carousel. And so they require a lot of maintenance, and unfortunately, the people who know how to maintain them are getting older, and we don't have a lot of young people who are interested. And there's so many carousels that need help and could use some young hands and young able bodies to get up into the mechanism. And one of the other things that people don't know about carousels is that all of the mechanisms as well, all of the ring gears and bevel gears and the motors and all of those internal pieces that nobody ever sees are also created by the factories, the carvers, and so you have Mangels making frames, you have Philadelphia Toboggan Company making frames and all of the machinery inside. And so those you can't, they're not, those aren't off the shelf parts, those are custom made, and some of these ring gears are 30 feet in diameter. They're huge, they're really big.
You just don't think about all that.
And that's why a lot of carousels run a lot slower than they used to at their peak, because they're really afraid of getting broken. They don't want to break. If you break a center bearing, it's your carousel's down for a long time. So
definitely. When did the music come into play, so to speak?
The music was always part of it. I think, there was always either live musicians, there's some, drummers, playing drums around the carousel, but the Wurlitzer Band Organ Company actually, so here's a really crazy story. So North Tonawanda, New York, before the Erie Canal, was one of the few places that could receive lumber from Canada. And so it was this place that was just filled with wood, just really incredible. And after the Civil War, the United States government started taxing instrument imports from Europe. And so in order for people to get, accordions and German violins and things like that, they were paying a heavy tax. And so instead of importing the musical instruments, the manufacturers and the sellers of the musical instruments decided to just import the makers. So they just imported a bunch of German music makers and instrument makers, and they found their way to North Tonawanda, New York, and they created the Wurlitzer Band Organ Company. There was also the North Tonawanda Music Company, and North Tonawanda was also where the Herschel, Alan Herschel and Herschel Spillman factories, carousel factories were. And that's just by virtue of having all of that wood around. And one of the wonderful things is that the Alan Herschel Company building is still up and operating, and it's actually now a museum, and so you can see that. So it's one of the other carousel museums in the country, but they're really focused on showing the manufacturing side, because it's where they were produced, it's where they were made. It's really
that's
amazing.
An old company.
Yeah, really old company.
Yeah. Very well known.
Yeah, it's really amazing. So.
So I'm glad you brought the pieces in, and the little one too.
Yeah.
So the museum is open Monday through.
Yep, we're there Monday and Tuesday. If people want to book private tours on Mondays and Tuesdays, they're welcome to do that. But we're open to the public Wednesday through Sunday, and our hours are Wednesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Sundays noon to 5. And we try to do public tours at noon and 2 p.m. We try to have those scheduled, pretty regularly. So if somebody wants to come in and have a tour, we do those every day at noon and 2, and on Sundays we do them at 2 o'clock.
Does it cost more to have a tour?
Nope, it's free with your admission. Admission is $10 for adults. No, don't say that. So that's good that it's open on weekends and during the week as well. Yep.
Thank you for telling us the history.
Oh, I got so many dates in my head.
Yeah. No, if you want to tell us more, we still
Yeah.
got 10 minutes.
Okay, so one of the fascinating things is that behind every animal are the carvers, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
so the carvers have so many wonderful stories, and this golden age of Carousel is really 1880 to about 1930, and so the same thing that was happening at the time in the United States, you're having this huge influx of immigrants coming from Europe, and the carousel industry was influenced by that influx of immigration. A lot of the carvers were of Jewish descent. They were fleeing a lot of what was happening in Eastern Europe, and so Solomon Stein and Harry Goldstein are of Jewish descent, and so you're really seeing this massing of very talented craftsmen, woodworkers, furniture workers, furniture makers, marble sculptors that are coming in and settling in Brooklyn, and that's why Coney Island really becomes this area where we just have a lot of amusement rides and carousels. Charles Loof actually is the first person to put an amusement ride. He puts a carousel on Coney Island in the 1860s. He's kicked out because of eminent domain. He's kicked out. The state takes his land. So he says, well, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And he goes and builds a carousel in Slater Park, Rhode Island. And he's also the first person to put a carousel in California. And so he was actually bi-coastal.
Wow,
and so he built in California and Rhode Island. So, but some new information that we just learned was that the jewels, there was a gentleman, actually two brothers from Naples, Italy, that really loved to jewel up horses. And so he would buy horses carved by a gentleman named Charles Carmel, and he would just bedazzle them. We call him the bedazzler. And we had always thought that it was because he just loved jewels and he loved sparkle.
Yeah.
Well, we just, because a woman named Betty Largent, who's part of the National Carousel Association, gave a presentation a couple weeks ago at the National Carousel Association. Her new research shows that, recovered that the Borelli brothers were from this town in Italy that was affected by the volcano of Pompeii, and they, when the volcano erupted, they lost most of their family, and they had to live in an orphanage, and then they made their way to the United States. But also in this town was a series of very important jeweled Pope relics that were completely encrusted in jewels, and it was to keep the Pope safe in his journey in the afterlife. And so it was a symbol of safety, and so they didn't just do it because they thought jewels were fancy. They did it because it was part of their heritage, and they felt that they had been spared, and they were required by whatever saved them to bedazzle all of the carousel horses that they could. So we're always learning all these new kinds of things. We're always doing history research, and at the museum we have an extensive archive which we're in the process of digitizing and doing all kinds of fun research and history. Looking at
a lot.
Oh, it's just so fun.
Director,
There's so much fun.
Ins and outs.
So much fun.
You had mentioned the Carousel Association. There's a Carousel Association.
Yeah. So one of the, on top of having one of the most fun jobs, I go to a carousel museum every day, work with carousels. Once a year, there's a group called the National Carousel Association, and there is actually a census of active operating carousels. And if you go to their website, you can see all of the active carousels. But they have a similar mission, or the same mission as us, is to preserve operating carousels. But we get together once a year and ride carousels for 5 days, which is really fun. So we do the carousel convention, and we are the Carousel Museum in Bristol is putting on the next one, which is in 2023, and it's going to be based in Warwick, Rhode Island. It's the 50th anniversary of the National Carousel Association, and we're going to have 5 days of hotel fun and riding carousels throughout the Northeast. So if you want to come ride carousels for 5 days and ride a bus around, yes, exactly. You do have to be okay going in circles.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. that building, the Carousel Museum building,
Yeah.
was what was that before? Because that's huge.
It's huge, yeah. It's a 30,000 square foot facility. It originally, back in the day, was the Bristol Manufacturing Company, and it has its own really incredible history. Yeah. So the building that we're in right now was built in 1901, and it was the storage facility for the Bristol Manufacturing Company. And for folks that don't know, Bristol is really well known for springs and clocks, and that is really what was the supporting industry of the town, and still really is. But the presidents of those manufacturing companies got together and said, hey, if this goes under, the whole town's going under. And so they decided to create the Bristol Manufacturing Company, which was a textile company. And so we made a product called Satinette, and I like to tell people that it was, it was underwear, but not underwear that we think of these days. It was more like, it looks more like sweatpants, like a knit, like a cable knit. Yeah. But it was a material called Satinette, and that's what we made at the museums in the building. But it saved the town in the Depression following the Civil War. The Bristol Manufacturing Company, which was founded in 1836, our building's not from 1836, but in our lower parking lot area, there was a building that used to be there, and actually all of the granite stones that you see around our property are from that building. From that building? Yeah. Wow. So.
Yeah, it's that's great that it's still standing. I mean, for that many years.
It's tough. It takes up most of my time.
Yeah, I had the Clock Museum director on, and I believe and she said there was like 350 manufacturers.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. I mean, and their collection is beautiful. Their whole place. If you have a chance to go there, the Clock Museum is a wonderful gem.
They'll be on. So, thank you so much for coming on. I think we have like a couple of minutes.
Sure.
So if there's a website.
Sure. The website is thecarouselmuseum.org, and there's a lot of information there. Everyone's welcome to contact me should they have any questions, and maybe we can talk a little bit about how to identify a horse. If you see a horse at a flea market and you're interested in it, you can shoot us a picture and let us know. We'll let you know if it's an imitation, because there are a lot of imitation carvings out there. So you want to be careful of that, and we're happy to let people know. We can't tell you what to buy or how much to pay for it. We can't do that, but we can just tell you if it's a reproduction or something that is an authentic piece.
I know when we visited the museum, she said they used to be all wood, and now it's going into plastic because there's not as many wood carvers now. Yeah,
the wood carving, well, it's just, I think one of the things that our contemporary carvers that work with the fiberglass and resin materials say is that if the carvers from the golden age of Carousel had these new materials, they definitely would have been working in these new materials. They're more forgiving, they're lighter, but it's a totally different skill set. But the wood carving is there's something really beautiful about it, and they've lasted hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah, they have. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that, but I'm just thank you for letting us know. When we went to see them, it was just beautiful. Yeah. They're still beautiful.
Yeah, there's a lot of joy in the museum, and they're definitely infused with all of the joy that people have given them over the years.
Yeah, I'm glad there's still places that you can restore these carousels.
Yes, yeah. So we do restoration for operating carousels, and we also do restoration for private pieces, because there are people that have individual pieces that they just have in their living rooms or at their homes, and so we do those as well. So.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you,
Morgan.
Thank you for having me back.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for joining Christine's Corner, and stay tuned for next week. Glad to have you. Thank you. Love you. Bye-bye.
The Saybrook Fish House in Canton has been serving fresh seafood, chicken, and steak entrees for 34 years, offering 3 cozy dining room settings, a newly renovated pub with craft beer, wine by the glass, specialty cocktails, and a lighter fare menu. Open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week. Reservations accepted for parties of 2 to 42, and gift certificates are also available. The Saybrook Fish House, nestled at the crossroads of Route 44, 202, and 179 in Canton.